What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Wildcast podcast. I'm Justin Spears here with Michael Lev. We're talking all things Arizona Wildcats football. Hey, basketball season's also right around the corner, too. As we're recording this podcast, Arizona men's basketball checking in at number 10 in the Associated Press top 25 poll. So Tommy Lloyd and the Wildcats expected to do some big things. I think Kansas is preseason number 1. So get ready, Arizona fans. Big 12 basketball. It's going to be awesome this year. It's going to be very loaded from top to bottom. But this podcast, we are talking Arizona Wildcats football. We'll answer some of your mailbag questions coming up here in just a little bit. As always, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast on Apple and Spotify, and check us out on Tucson.com. Get an online subscription today, and also download the Wildcaster mobile app. Lots of cool things on there. Some of it is free. Some of it is subscriber only, like Lev's super insightful content. But yeah, if you're an Arizona fan, you got to download the Wildcaster mobile app today. So, Lev, you and I were both on the road this weekend.
We were. It's true.
I was in Provo, Utah, for Arizona's 41-19 loss to the BYU Cougars, which we'll talk about. You were in Colorado, checking out prime time in the Colorado Buffaloes against Kansas State. How was that experience?
I got to tell you, man, it was a scene in every aspect of the word. That place was absolutely packed. It was loud. You know, we don't get to experience at Arizona Stadium like what it feels like in the arena because the windows are closed. They open the windows to Colorado. We also don't get to go down on the field before the game ends because we have to watch every single snap. You know, you've got to fire off a story, you know, right at the buzzer. So I was able at that game to not only hear the crowd throughout, but then go down onto the field for the last 5 minutes, which was a completely crazy last 5 minutes because it went from 24-21 Kansas State to 28-24 Colorado with 3:12 left. And then Kansas State mounts this ridiculous like 3-play drive going like 75 yards, 2 huge pass plays by Avery Johnson to retake the lead in the final minutes. I looked all around the stadium. I don't think there was a single empty seat.
Wow.
And it was like 11:40 p.m. or so because this game kicked at like 8:25 p.m. Mountain Time.
A lot of Kansas State fans too?
Yeah, they had their corner, and they were very loud when Kansas State took the lead and then won the game. But yeah, it was a great scene, and I'm going to be writing about the whole Coach Prime experience here for a piece coming up in the middle of the week.
They got some injuries on their team. Travis Hunter, Horn, their star wide receiver too.
Yep. They lost. So Travis Hunter, of course, the best player in America, right? Bar none. Plays both sides of the ball full time, plays them both well. He's, you know, we'll probably find out more here in the coming days, but questionable at best, I would say, as we're recording this for Saturday's game against Arizona. Huge impact on both sides.
I think he was going to play. This is
Horn. Yeah.
This is his draft stock game
for
both sides.
Yeah, it kind of is. Jimmy Horn got hurt. 2 other receivers got hurt. They have a gazillion receivers. Like it's absurd. The receiver talent they have on that team, but some pretty big blows, you know? Yeah. And then we will talk a lot more about the Colorado matchup later, but real quick, like Arizona's secondary is depleted too. So
yeah,
it's not like a huge advantage in terms of the injuries with that particular matchup. And they play 4 wides all the time as well. So they put a lot of stress on your secondary. This would be the game for the dollar package. I don't know if Arizona has enough healthy players to do the dollar package as things currently stand.
And with that being said, transitioning over to what I was experiencing in Provo.
Yeah.
Great fan experience. It was a sellout crowd. It was packed. Apparently, I was a little surprised to hear this. The most fans at a BYU football game since 2009, which I'm like, even like in some of the years under Kalani Sitake, like they had some really good seasons. I was surprised to hear that was the largest crowd since 2009, but it was packed under the sun. The weather was perfect. Lavelle Edwards Stadium, that setting is one of the best I've ever been to on the road. Like the crowd, super engaged. It's a good environment, but it doesn't really feel like truly hostile, like against the other team. It's just those people are just nuts about BYU football. And under the the mountains too in the background. It's truly a spectacle. I highly recommend anyone, if you're a college football fan, to get out to a game at BYU. It's really quite the scene. And
Yeah,
apparently in November, when the snow is on the mountains, it's even more beautiful.
Yeah, big noon kickoff was there. Of
Yeah.
course, that could have been a draw and maybe a little bit of a factor in the huge crowd that they had. But that's usually what accompanies Colorado. Arizona
Yeah.
has not had that type of Arizona has not been that draw. Arizona does have some star players, some fun players to watch. One of those star players is really struggling right now, though.
Yep.
What is your take on what's happened to Noah Fafita?
I don't know. And I don't want to put everything on him because he definitely doesn't deserve everything. He doesn't deserve all the blame that's going on with Arizona's issues right now, because some of it is coaching. Like, I think his first interception, which was intended to, I think, Kean Burnett, but I thought initially Montana Lamonius Craig.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea. I thought it was Montana Lamonius Craig in the end zone, but Brent Brennan was saying, yeah, he overshot Kean Burnett, and then the lurking safety comes over and makes the play. But he said that it created this log jam near the pylon, and that shouldn't have happened. And I'm like, well, something happened. There was a miscommunication, and it was the receiver's fault. So are these guys running the wrong routes? Like, what is going? I have no idea what's going on with Arizona's offense, and that's what I'm saying. Like, as much as I want to sit here and say like everything is on Noah Fafita, I don't think it is.
I think a large part of the problem is that Noah thinks it needs to be all on him. Like, he's trying to do too much. Like, he feels this sense of responsibility, to carry the program. And that's to me is the part that needs to change.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to do everything, Noah. You don't have to. We've made this analogy before, but you don't have to try to hit a home run every time you step up to the plate. It's okay to get a single, a double, a walk, a hit by pitch, just get on base and help the team. I know that. Yeah, well, you have to do it for the whole game.
Yeah.
I know that particular play, there were two receivers who were maybe too close to each other, but you don't have to make that throw. They showed one of the great parts about the game being on Big Fox and getting the A team with Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson is they had the sky cam, right? So you could see, and Joel Klatt did a great job of showing a lot of these plays. You could see what was happening in the secondary. On that particular play, it looked like Sam Olsen was somewhat open, or open enough in kind of the right flat area underneath. Throw it to him, and you're still alive. You're in field goal range, and you've got a great kicker. The worst thing you can do is throw it into traffic. And he did that through that same pass against Texas Tech into the end zone. Guys open underneath. Utah throwing into the end zone, guys underneath. You don't have to go for it on every single play.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem. They also illustrated on the first touchdown, like, how it can go the other way. Like, T-Mac ran a post, cleared out two defenders. Montana Lamonius Craig crossed underneath, worked perfectly. He took like what the defense gave him, hit MLC. He ran into the end zone. It was a beautifully designed and executed play. I think the second interception, you could argue, was a great play by the defense, but to me, it's more of a game management issue. Like, that screenplay wasn't going to work. Like, there were defenders in the air, in the area. Throw it in the ground. It's first down.
Yeah.
Throw it in the ground. Live to see another down. The game, and we've talked about this before. Like, I view game manager not as a criticism of a quarterback, but like, that's kind of what the job is. I hate it when people say, "Oh, he's just a game manager." Well, that's what you're supposed to do as a quarterback. You're supposed to know down and distance, score of the game, field position, like what the answers are out on the field, read the defense, make good decisions. He's not making sound decisions right now. And that's the part that is a little bit worrisome.
And one thing about Noah last year was everything seemed to be more 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. He made his reads. He found Jacob Cowing. He found his buddy T-Mac. He found Tanner McLaughlin. Some of these other guys, they're really struggling to get open. And I really don't know what's going on. If it's the receivers running too deep of routes most of the time, if Noah Fafita is holding on to the ball too long. I know that pressure wasn't as good this game as it was against Utah. There was definitely some leakage. Like the offensive line didn't really do Noah Fafita any favors in that game whatsoever. So I don't know. But the offense right now has an identity crisis. And it's always after the first drive. Like they always set the tone and they always look great. And then they just completely unravel. And then you get into situations where, like you said, Noah Fafita is trying to hit the home run and is trying to make the exciting play when he doesn't need to. And I was really surprised, Lev, when I looked into their games since New Mexico. Remember, New Mexico, they scored 61 points. They had put up a ton of yards. T-Mac broke the single game receiving record. Arizona's offense looked electric and looked like it was going to be one of the more exciting units in all of college football this season. They set the tone. And then from that point forward, Arizona's offense has gone Iowa. Like they're putting up 18.6 points per game since that contest. And if you look at when they get to the opposing team's side of the field, whenever they get past the 50-yard line, Lev, I was really shocked. 30 drives, and I think 8 are touchdowns. So 27% of the time, when they get to the other side of the field, they're scoring touchdowns. That seems like a very low number when you get past the 50. I get it. You know, Tyler Loop, he's a weapon. He's certainly something that every college football team would love to have. Just ask Jed Fish if he wants a guy like Tyler Loop on his team at Washington. But you can't just rely on Tyler Loop. And right now, the defense is so decimated with injuries that they are really struggling. And the offense really needs to do their job to carry the weight. I think they have the weapons. I'm just really confused as to what's going on with that side of the ball right now for Arizona, because the last 5 games have just been really confusing.
Something isn't clicking, right? Like you look at the final stats and you're like, hey, they had 389 yards. They had 25 first downs. They had, the one time of possession, very similar to Texas Tech, right? Like they had a goodly number of yards and a bunch of first downs and so forth. Hey, against BYU, they even had 11 of 19 third down conversions. They've been terrible on third down, right? So but when you watch it, when you sit there and watch it, which we do every single play, and most fans are the same way, like something is off, right? It doesn't look smooth. It doesn't look like there's a
Looks hard.
definitive plan. Like, yes, everything seems hard, right? Even some of those third down conversions, it's like scramble, run around, find T-Mac down the field, and it sort of feels like a miraculous conversion, it's not like, and then on the flip side, they get into 2nd and 1 in that one sequence, the same exact thing that happened against Texas Tech, 3 plays to gain a yard, and they can't do it.
Yeah.
So super frustrating.
The stick measures.
I don't know what happened on that whole sequence with when they brought out the sticks, like it looked like a first down, and then they said it wasn't. But anyway,
and then it was confirmed. It was confirmed that BYU stopped them when the original call was Arizona got the first down. It's like I don't know about confirmed.
That's what I thought happened too. But when you watch it, it just seems like there's some sort of a disconnect between like what they're intending to do and what they're actually doing.
Yeah.
Noah Fafita really hasn't looked comfortable since the first game. We have talked a lot about his average time to throw, which to me is a very telling factor. You're speaking earlier about this idea of 1, 2, 3, right? Like a sort of a snappiness to the offense, like a rhythm to the offense. Well, last year, his average time to throw, which means like from the time he catches the snap to getting rid of the ball, it was 2.55 seconds. Okay. And that was one of the biggest differences between him and Jaden DeLora. Noah got the ball out. This year, that number is 3.23. So it's more than half a second higher, which means he's holding the ball longer, and he's not something. So it's either the structure of the offense or what he's seeing or not seeing when he's scanning the field.
And he's drifting
And
back
that's
too.
he's drifting back, like a
That's what
lot
Jaden
of
Delora did.
a lot of bad habits. A lot of bad habits. Somehow I think I wrote this or mentioned this at some point. Maybe it was on one of our recent pods, but he's kind of morphed into Jaden Delora somehow. Like a lot of the things that Jaden would do that would drive everyone crazy, like hanging on the ball, drifting, running around, like freelancing, like that's what it feels like now. And that's not who Noah Fifita was last year at all. He's super efficient, right? So again, I don't want to put it all on him either, because I don't think the coaches are putting him in the best position to succeed. They need to recognize whatever we're doing is not working. So what can we do that will work? And everyone's kind of talked about the same things: more quick passes, slants, screens, plays maybe they should be running more mesh, where the receivers are shallow crossing in opposite directions over the middle. That's always a good play against man coverage. Maybe more pick routes, like something to get the ball out of his hands and generate some rhythm to the offense. This has been hard to do the last couple games because they fell behind, but I would also love to see them just run the ball 55% of the time.
Yeah.
You don't see that a lot in college football, but I think it would help a great deal. I think it'd help the offensive line if they did that. That unit really struggled. I gave them a D for their performance at BYU. I thought they allowed way too much pressure, couldn't generate a push in that short yardage situation, couldn't recognize blitzes. That happened over and over again. Like, there was one play, you weren't watching the TV broadcast, but Joel Klatt was like, "Oh, they're blitzing, here they come," and like they just came in, and Wendell Moy went to the right, the blitz came from the left, wasn't picked up. I mean, that happened repeatedly in that game. As we've mentioned before on the pod, like, as an offensive lineman, you love run blocking, right? You love going forward and not going backward. I think that would help that group's confidence, and I think it would alleviate some of the burden on Noah Fifita.
And I will say this, though, speaking of the offensive line, allowing guys to come in and pressure Noah, man, that one at the end with Tyler Batty towards the end where he just completely shoved him out of the back of the end zone, like 5 yards. Man, I really felt for Noah. I'm like, poor Noah is just getting killed right now. Almost pulled the Dan Orlovsky, stepped out of the back of the end zone. He was so close.
I know. We were all
so
thinking
close.
it because he's had this bad habit of drifting back. And I'm like, he can't drift back now because he's going to drift right off the field.
Yeah.
And he's way too competitive to just give up in that situation. You could question whether the coaching staff should have just, basically concluded that the game was over at that point and just like run the ball, run out the clock instead of exposing him to those hits like they did. I mean, he got crushed. We have a picture of it. One off AP caught that one. It's up on our website. It might be in the gallery or in one of our pieces, but he got smacked.
Yeah.
On that play. Let me ask you something else, Justin. What did you think of the call against Jacob Manu for targeting?
I kind of get it. I mean, when I saw it under review, I thought he's going to get ejected. I think they're going to rule it targeting. Just the way some of these targeting calls are going, Manu kind of did lead with his head, but also at the same time, I've seen worse. And so I was like, I think they're going to call it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they just picked up the flag and decided to put it back in their pocket and just kind of give a warning to Manu, like, hey, just watch it, please. And so I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, the refs made an absolute terrible call. Me personally, I wouldn't have ruled him for targeting, but yeah, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah. So remember that period of time as football consumers when we were all asking, what's a catch? It's kind of around. Yeah. No one kind of knew what is a catch. And
Des caught it.
Yeah. Des caught it or he didn't. And they made some changes to the rules to make it a little bit clearer. I think we have a better grasp of what is a catch now. I think the new what is a catch is what is targeting. Because I see these plays all the time in in college football where you see the play, you look at the replay, and you're like, oh, that's targeting, and then the player doesn't get ejected. Then you look at a play like with Manu. I mean, that play it's in the flow of the game with a ball carrier, not a defenseless player, right? He's just making a tackle. I mean, that to me feels unintentional, incidental even. Like there needs to be some sort of like, to me, like two levels of this, like unintentional and intentional targeting or whatever.
You want like
However,
a yellow card, red card type of thing?
Yes,
In
absolutely.
football?
I mean,
Okay.
does that seem like an ejection worthy play
No.
to you? I mean, no
No.
way. Joel Klatt was pretty mad about it too on the broadcast, as he should have been. And he's not biased for one team or another. He's a Colorado guy. So, I mean, there's really no way to me that play was worthy of a disqualification.
No.
Or I don't know, or lessen the penalty or something. You're out for the rest of the half. You get to come back in the second half. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's too severe, and it's sort of way too, like, I don't know if it's too open to interpretation or not open to interpretation enough. But that play to me did not reach that level, of like intent or launching yourself or clearly like going helmet to helmet. It was just a guy running over making a tackle on a ball carrier, a guy who happens to be like 5'9", and a lot of the players that he's going to face are bigger. And if he catches them at the wrong angle, he's going to get kicked out. Someone pointed out later, there was a play. I think was it the blindside blockers? There was a play where it was a block thrown by a BYU player into an Arizona player, and it kind of looked like targeting. And someone was asking me like, oh, can an offensive player get ejected for targeting? And I'm like, yes, this happened to JJ Taylor against Cal in 2017. I think it was 2017, where he was blocking someone and he got kicked out for targeting. Which
he
again, like
when you're 5'7".
Yeah, again, when you're a shorter player, sometimes like your helmet just kind of gets in the way. So I don't know. I feel like sometimes you need to look at what the intent is. And I hear all the time from the officiating circles, oh, you can't legislate or assume what intent is. Like why can't you?
Yeah.
Like use some common sense.
Yeah, I was on the fence there. I'm like, I could see him getting ejected for targeting, but I agree with you. I think the yellow card, red card system in college football, I think that could be very useful.
It's a great idea.
I think a lot of people would appreciate that.
2 yellows and you're out, right? Isn't that how it works?
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Also, I do want to give a ton of credit to Noah Fafita for continuing to speak after losses. Like, I know that's tough, man. Like to play bad and then having to come out and really face the music. He is the leader of this team. He is the face of the franchise, and I very much I commend his maturity and his willingness to just kind of take accountability and be like, yeah, I messed up. And also, speaking of Jacob Manu, going back to him, the ejection was kind of like the first part of a snowball effect with defensive players going out, because then Tacario Davis ended up going out. He was kind of reaching towards his groin, which was something that we noticed during training camp, Lev. We were like, man, Tacario just doesn't look right. And he was kind of, reaching it and massaging that area and was trying to run on the sidelines. And he actually went out for a couple of drives in the second half and then ended up just calling it quits because he couldn't go out there anymore. And so Tacario Davis goes out. You have, I think Marquise Gross-Killebrew also left with injury as well. And now you got Demetrius Freeney, you got Jack Luttrell playing reps, guys who have never really played defensive snaps. They've mostly been used on special teams. So that side of the ball is really depleted. And I was thinking, man, with Travis Hunter and all those guys coming to town, like this could be ugly and potentially turn into a track meet. Like that side of the ball is really, really hurt right now, Lev.
Yeah, I mean, again, we'll talk about Colorado later in the week, but if they do have a lot of injuries on that side of the ball, they're probably going to have to play a lot of zone. They're going to have to be really conservative, just try to, keep the ball in front. Hope that, hope that Colorado messes up somewhere along the way. But yeah, it was alarming. And you add to that, right? No Traden Stukes.
Yeah.
No Gunnar Maldonado. Manu goes out. They're missing a couple defensive linemen. I thought that Dwayne Aquina did a great job in that game of keeping it like within arm's reach, considering all of the injuries that they had. I didn't think the defensive line did a great job of getting pressure. They had only 7 pressures, according to Pro Football Focus. And they gave BYU's defenders 24 pressures. So put that in a little bit of perspective. But they kind of did that bend but don't break thing for the most part. They had some really short fields that they had to deal with, like the start of the second half.
The 2 turnovers.
The 2 turnovers back to back. They weren't without fault. Like Tacario Davis should have had an interception. Like the easy, like I don't. It's like a mental thing to me. Like that was the easiest pick you could ever have, and he almost just pulled his hands away instead of trying to grab the ball. That was strange. I thought Marquise Groves-Killebrew could have had a pick, and he totally misjudged the ball. Like
it almost looks like he pulled back.
It was weird.
I'm like, dude, sprawl out.
Yeah, and then Tai Yungulele, 2 killer offside penalties. One when BYU's backed up, exactly where you want them, and then they all of a sudden they have breathing room because of that. And then it was a 3rd and 8 that became a 3rd and 3. Which is a much more manageable situation. So not without fault, but overall, I thought they did a really good job. They need help from the offense. Again, if you score touchdowns instead of field goals, it makes everyone's job a lot easier, including the defense.
And I was looking at the end of the game there, and the only defensive starter from last year's team that was on the field was Dalton Johnson.
Oh, man.
Because you think about it, all new defensive line, then Jacob Manu gets ejected, all those injuries in the secondary. A lot of new faces on Arizona's defense right now. And then with Gunner out and also Manu getting ejected, those are the 2 coach-to-player communication guys with the helmets in. So after that, they had to go really old school, and they just signaled plays to Trey Smith. And Trey Smith was kind of the play caller for the defense. So, yeah, they had to adjust to some adversity. But I thought defense, considering the circumstances that they were put in, I thought they did a decent job because 42 points off of turnovers. Arizona, all the turnovers in the last 2 games.
Last 2, yeah.
I think was it 6 turnovers have resulted in 42 points for the opposing team. So offense is not doing the defense any favors right now.
Yeah, there were 24 points in the BYU game, and I would say, one of them I would pin on the defense because it was an interception at the 1-yard line and BYU drove 99 yards. But the other 17, it was interception, touchdown to start the second half. Then it was fumble, and the defense actually held them to a field goal. So there's 10 points. And then a pick 6 at the end. So BYU scored 41, 17 directly off of turnovers. So to me, the defense surrendered 24 points. That should be enough to win most college football games, as I wrote in my 5 takeaways. But the way the offense is playing right now, it's not.
All right, Lev, you got plenty of mailbag questions.
Yeah, I do.
You sent out the bat signal, so let's get to it.
I do. Okay. So these from Sean, one guy named Sean, another guy named John are very similar. So I'll kind of lump them together. Sean says offense. Why few throws down the middle of the field last game? Mostly fade routes to the sides, except a couple to T-Mac. Receivers aren't getting open. Why? And then John says, I've heard the reason we don't run quick slants crosser routes is that Noah is too short to see the middle of the field. Is that the case? Or have we just not called those plays? What's the biggest difference in passing game philosophy between last year and this year? You can start, Justin, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, I think the crossing routes, I mean, that was something that Arizona did last year, but they also had other players that allowed T-Mac to get open, that allowed, other players to get open, like Jacob Cowing and Tanner McLaughlin. Those are 2 NFL players. And honestly, shame on me for not, I guess, emphasizing in the offseason how important losing those 2 guys are. Yes, it's important that you have a Noah Fafita, you have a Tetairoa McMillan back in your offense, but losing left tackle in Jordan Morgan was a big loss. Losing a slot receiver in Jacob Cowing and McLaughlin, those are big losses. We have not really seen those positions outside of Kean Burnett's touchdown catch against Utah. We haven't really seen much from the slot receiver. We haven't really seen much from the tight end. And, honestly, I think a part of it is coaching and getting these guys to run the right routes, like the Kean Burnett, Montana Lamonius Craig incident that resulted in Noah Fafita's interception. Like, why is that happening in the middle part of the season? And of course, it was near the sideline at the end zone. Not a lot of stuff going on in the middle of the field. And I don't know if it's Noah Fafita's height, because didn't he make these throws last year? Right?
Did he get shorter
Like,
in the offseason? I don't think so. I think he's the
no.
same height that he was last year.
Yeah. So he
right?
did this last year. I think part of it has to do with play calling. And I honestly think that Noah needs to look at some of these other guys in the underneath routes. Like, I think the interception to T-Mac against Texas Tech, like, Quali Conley was right there in the middle of the field. I think it's up to Noah to make these decisions. I understand that his height is somewhat of a factor, but like last year we saw him, he was able to bend his body and make these different moves that allowed him to get the ball out of his hands. So it's honestly just very confusing, but I think it's a little bit of Noah and a little bit of coaching in the routes that they're running.
I'm gonna give you two stats here that I think illustrate like what's changed structurally or schematically. From Pro Football Focus. Last year, 27% of Noah's dropbacks came off of play action. This year, that number is 15.1%. So they're utilizing play action way less. Play action is a way to open up the middle of the field, right? By the way, breaking news here, Justin, Cam Rising is out indefinitely with a lower leg injury. I don't know if y'all watched that game on Friday night. He got hurt early in the game and probably shouldn't have been kept in. I think a major mistake by Kyle Whittingham that probably cost them that game and maybe a playoff berth. But anyway, back to Noah Fafita. So play action, they're not utilizing play action as much as they were last year. So that's one factor. Okay, now I'm looking at what PFF calls short center passes. Like they break things down: deep, intermediate, short, and behind the line of scrimmage. Percentage of passing attempts last season in the short center part of the field. So that means 0 to 9 yards between the numbers. 26% last year of his passing attempts were in that area. Okay. This year, 16.9%. So it's not your imagination, folks. Like what you're seeing is what is happening. Now I wonder, Justin, like how much those two things are related, like the lack of play action and the lack of throws to the middle of the field, because one could create the other, So like if I'm, sitting there in the meeting rooms, the coaches' meeting rooms this week, I'm like, what are we not doing enough of to put this guy in a position to succeed? And maybe that's it. Maybe they need to put him under center a little more, or even out of shotgun, get some play action, get some quick hitting pass plays in the middle of the field in that 0 to 9 yard range.
Yep.
Okay, so the next one, I'm going to go with W. Dan. Lots of attrition on the team. Pulido, Krosky Merritt, Magnuson, Speedy Luke, injuries, Murphy, Anderson, Maldonado, Stukes, Ma'ai. Is this happening to all teams? I think what W. Dan is trying to say is, like, does Arizona have more injuries or more personnel losses than other teams? What do you think?
It happens. I've seen this happen with many Arizona football teams in the past, especially under Rich Rodriguez. He had, some teams where one side of the ball, especially on defense, was just dealing with a bunch of injuries. So I think honestly, it's just unfortunate that this is happening to Arizona, and it's happening to some very important players, right? It'd be one thing if this was, some special teams players, some fringe players getting hurt, but it's happening with some very important guys like Traden Stukes, like Gunnar Maldonado, and Arizona just doesn't really have the depth to really have these kind of issues happen. Like, we all know that Arizona's talented, right? Like that preseason ranking, then coming into the season with a ton of hype, like it was honestly deserved. Arizona deserved that buzz because they had really good players on their team. But the players behind them, the depth that Arizona has, it's not there. And so when you get these injuries, Arizona's getting exposed right now, and their lack of depth is really getting exposed. And so honestly, it's just a thing that happens with college sports. sports in general. Injuries do happen. Last year's team was very fortunate to not have significant injuries. As a matter of fact, an injury was probably the most significant thing to happen to Arizona with Jaden Delores' ankle, because then that brought in Noah Fafita and they went on this great run. And that was really the only big injury for Arizona last year. So I just chalk it up to bad luck.
Yeah, it's the nature of the game. Now, the first several guys that W. Dan listed, well, at least 3 of them are non-injury situations.
Krosky Merritt.
Raymond Polito, we're not going to talk about exactly what that was, but that's a non-injury situation. Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, NCAA, red tape, bureaucracy, BS, keeping him out of the lineup. Speedy Luke, he decided to redshirt. When we asked Brent Brennan about that, he was sort of like, well, you'll have to ask him, because it's clearly that's not something that Brent Brennan wanted to happen. With Leif Magnuson, it's a concussion situation. They wear those Guardian caps during practice, but they're not 100% foolproof. Stuff happens. I would be more concerned, from a training and conditioning standpoint, if it was a lot of hamstrings and groins and injuries of that nature. But Traden Stukes has a partially torn ACL or something. Gunnar Maldonado, it seems like it's a pretty severe, knee or leg sprain of some sort. Jara Bear Anderson is some kind of a broken shin, or he tweeted about it. Guys break broken bones happen in football, and comparing to other teams, other situations, look at Oklahoma. I think their top 5 wide receivers have been out or something to that effect, and they have the fewest, or second fewest explosive plays of any team in the country. So this happens sometimes. And they had, and a lot of it is kind of like luck, and they had really good injury luck last year, and it's coming back to bite them a little bit this year, I think. All right, so I have 5 questions or so from Catbacker.
Okay.
So I'll kind of try to run through them. Bunch of different subjects here. Some of them are kind of related. Anyway, well, we'll start with this one. You kind of touched on this a little bit, but the expectations of this year's football team were set by the media, not by the fans. Is it possible that the media underestimated the loss of key players from last year and did not do a good enough job of evaluating this year's team? In a word, yes. I would say that is true. We talked about it. We mentioned it. I think we were sort of swayed by the star power that they had, and they did. They had a lot of stars coming back to this team. But they also lost some really important and excellent players, especially on the offensive side of the ball and along the defensive line.
Yeah. Tanner McLaughlin, Jacob Cowing, Jordan Morgan, those are all true NFL players. And so losing those guys, it's a pretty significant loss. And I guess, like I said earlier, I didn't emphasize enough, how filling those positions, how important that's going to be for Arizona, and how they need to, figure out their path after losing those guys. But like you said, Lev, you got Noah Fafita, you got Tetsuo McMillan, people
and Jonas Sava-Anaya,
and Jonas Sava-Anaya,
Takari
Davis,
Jacob
Manu. The list goes on and on with the star power that they have. I mean, Noah Fafita was getting off-season Heisman odds. That's where Arizona football was
maybe
at.
Could have, if he and T-Mac had elected to go somewhere, he could have made, I don't know, $1 million.
Yeah.
Going to another school. That's kind of how it was viewed. And so then you kind of go back to the, the whole, are they coaching him correctly? Is this another Khalil Tate situation where, the coaching staff came in and took the super talented player and messed him up? Another topic for another time. All right. So more Catbacker questions here. Is having an All-American receiver on the team more of a hindrance due to the fact that he needs to be featured? This creates pressure on the QB to feature him exclusively at the detriment to spreading the ball around. T-Mac will not be happy getting less touches. So I see this all the time on message boards and social media. People are analyzing T-Mac's body language. Is he not getting enough touches? Is he unhappy? Why is he running off the field at the end of the game? When I watch him play, I don't see a player who's not giving effort. I don't see a player who's not supporting his teammates. He ran over and congratulated MLC, I'm pretty sure. Like after he caught that TD, I see him blocking and playing hard. Now, do I think sometimes that Noah like uses that as a crutch? Like he's kind of always looking for T-Mac first and foremost at the expense of maybe running the offense. There might be something to that, but like on a net basis, of course, I would rather have a talent like T-Mac on my team than not.
What do you see in the red zone? Because I didn't realize this until recently that, T-Mac, I don't think he scored a touchdown since the New Mexico game. Is that right? So since the season opener, when he set the single game receiving record, tied the receiving touchdown record in a single game, he has not scored a touchdown since then.
Yeah, I pointed this out. It was I think my second or third takeaway. I was looking at that goal to goal situation where they were at the 3-yard line. It's second and goal from the 3. And the first play, like Noah's drifting back, and it's some sort of like, I don't know, some sort of crossing route concept. And he tried to throw to, I think it was Devin Hyatt, maybe running across the back line. To me, like slow developing, low percentage kind of play. And then the next one, I don't know, they motioned T-Mac into a bunch formation, which they had done earlier, I think to convert a 4th down, maybe. It worked really well, but there's more congestion when you're, near the goal line. And there was immediate pressure. And I think Noah like wheeled out to the left and ended up just kind of throwing the ball away. To me, it's like, how are you not at least trying one jump ball, stop fade, or full on fade route to T-Mac at least once? Give your guy a chance
to make a one-on-one play.
Like ice, put him all the way over there, put everyone else over there, and throw him the ball.
Yeah.
Like to me, like there's like the one side of forcing it to him too much, and then the other side of he is your best weapon. He's 6'4". He's a great leaper. He's got great hand-eye coordination, strong hands. Like give him a chance to make a play there. And they didn't do it. So I thought that was really frustrating. It's not it's not all of the issues. A lot of times they don't even get to the red zone. It's like that kind of
the fringe.
Yeah, the fringe of the red zone. They're just, they're settled. A lot of these, it's not like if you look at their red zone attempts, they're very low.
Yeah.
On the season compared to a lot of other teams because of some of the issues that we've talked about. Okay. Cat Backer, more questions. Carrying the podcast here, Justin. Since our current athletic director did not hire Brennan, how long or short is his leash with her, especially if the results are not there?
This is the part that I was hoping we'd talk about because the Twitter sphere or the X sphere, depending on what you call it, has kind of turned into a cesspool. And you really see the griminess of sports fans, especially with the U of A. And people calling for Brent Brennan's job, and it ain't happening this year, right? Unless you can pay the $10 million for his buyout. If you can pay that, then yeah, but Arizona's not going to do that because they're trying to figure out ways to save money because they have this financial situation that's going on in the athletic department and also the university. So they're not going to fire Brent Brennan after one season. Usually in these situations, a coach will get 3 years. And if we're talking about firing Brent Brennan, I think it'll have to be in 2026. But right now, it's not happening. And I know that Desiree Reed-Francois really likes Brennan. If I'm not mistaken, didn't they have some overlap at San Jose State?
I think that's true.
Yeah, she worked at
they
San
also
Jose
have
State for
like
a bit.
common
Marcus Arroyo.
Marcus Arroyo is kind of a connective tissue
their guy
between the two of them. Look,
not
when Brent Brennan was hired, Dave Hickey was the athletic director, and Bobby Robbins was the school president. And both of those positions have changed since then. Arizona has a new athletic director and they have a new president. I do not think the new president is going to be very involved in athletics. Based on what we know about him, he's definitely more on the academic side of things, which can be good and bad. Some people think that Bobby Robbins was way too meddlesome in the area of athletics. That's did he have a hand in some of the decisions that were made over the years? Maybe not. We may never know for sure.
Jerry Jones,
the Jerry Jones of school presidents, but Desiree, she's in a situation where she's trying to turn the finances around with the athletic department, and is also trying to figure out, where am I going to get $20 million for revenue sharing, to pay the athletes when the House ruling finally becomes official. So I think the last thing on her mind is changing head football coaches. Now, could she sit down with Brent after the season, have a conversation about, hey, we might need to make some changes to the staff?
Yeah.
That's possible. It might not be something that he wants to do, but we've already seen that he'll make decisions that he has to make, even if he doesn't feel comfortable about them. Okay, I got two more from Cat Backer, and they're sort of related, and they're like about the stadium experience. With a college undergraduate enrollment of over 40,000, why doesn't the university target more of the student body to attend sporting events, and constantly lambasting the town folks to blindly support university sports? And then he also says, why doesn't the university donate football tickets to high schools, grade schools, middle schools, religious schools, and other philanthropical organizations just to fill up the stadium? The second part was something that was actually addressed in that audit that was conducted of the athletic department. And they said, you're giving away too many tickets. Basically, like, it's great to get the community involved, for them to come to Arizona Stadium and experience what that's like. But when you're giving away a lot of tickets, that pulls some money out of your pocket.
You're paying for it.
You're paying for it instead of having others.
Someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah. So I think, it is definitely a nice gesture to do that, but I don't think that's something that is like a long-term business strategy, that's very sound. As far as, targeting the students more versus like blaming Tucson, I mean, we could have a whole podcast about attendance and the reasons that Arizona Stadium doesn't get filled up. I mean, I think the stadium's too big. I think the stadium is too old. I think the kickoff times are a huge detriment. It's like, it's either too late or too early. We're probably going to get nice weather for Saturday's game, 1 p.m., which is awesome. But you can never, basically can't schedule any afternoon games for the first like 6 weeks or so of the season. Then a lot of the kickoffs end up being at 7:30 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And, little kids, it's hard for them to come to a game. It starts that late. The older part of the audience, with a lot of older folks who live in Tucson, you're going to come to an 8 p.m. game that really kicks off maybe at 8:05 or 8:10 and ends at 11:35. Then you got to deal with traffic and drive home. Like,
well, also,
I don't know. Does that sound like a pleasant experience to you?
No. And also too, Lev, the religious crowd too, Sunday morning, what are you doing? 7 a.m. You got to go to church. Like growing up here in Tucson, I come from a Catholic household, and there were a lot of times, Lev, where the game was too late because Sunday morning we had to go to church. And then eventually, I think after my communion, we kind of stopped going to church and we got our Sundays back to kind of sleep in and do some other things as a family. But again, like we didn't go to a lot of Arizona football games because they were late and we had religious obligations the next morning. So I think kickoff times certainly play a huge factor.
Yeah, I would love it. I think we'd all love it if they kicked off at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. But TV dictates those decisions. And It's been that way for decades, and that's not going to change. People thought when they went to the Big 12 that it would be better. And it is, in the sense that a lot of the road games are going to be in the central time zone, some even in the eastern time zone. But that has no impact whatsoever on home games. And the reason that the Big 12 wanted to have the four corner schools was that so they could get into those late windows.
Yeah.
A lot of times there's only one or two games on at that time, and you get a lot of exposure that way. But it's not necessarily favorable for the home fans. Like, to me, like the ultimate kind of solution to these problems would be to build a domed stadium. But who does anyone have $500 million floating around to do that?
I also think the fan experience too around the stadium needs to be improved. Like BYU had live music and a lot of things that were interactive with fans. You have to have something more than just a tailgating scene on the U of A mall. Kansas State, pretty much everywhere within a mile of the stadium, Lev, had tailgating everywhere, all around the stadium. I think Arizona pregame and the stuff around the game could be much improved. And even if, you're not bringing in people inside the stadium, having stuff outside, having stuff near the stadium and making it more interactive, having people around there, I think is critical and will bring in a very interesting environment. And I got to say, the environments that I've seen on the road this year at Kansas State, at Utah, and at BYU have all been better than Arizona, just in terms of crowd noise interaction. So I'm telling you what, guys, the days of the Pac-12, those are far behind. In terms of fan engagement and game day experience, Arizona is lacking in the Big 12. That's just from my experience in the early goings of this season.
Yeah, one last thing. Thanks, Cat Backer and all the others for sending in those questions. We love hearing from you guys, and we love answering them, and it makes for good content. But Arizona against West Virginia on October 26th is going to be a 6-day selection. So we will not know what the kickoff time is until probably maybe late Saturday night or maybe Sunday of this week. So that's another thing that I think is a turnoff for fans too, by the way. Like best case scenario, 2 weeks out, like what the kickoff time is. And sometimes it's less than that. And that makes it hard to plan, especially if you're coming in from out of town. And as we know, there are a lot of U of A fans who live in Phoenix or in the Phoenix area. It's about 2 hours away. So how do you plan your trip if you don't know if the game's going to start at 1 p.m. or 8 p.m.?
Yep. If you were to take a guess what that game time will be, what's your take? 7:30?
I don't know.
Is that an FS1 game?
Like a 4:30? I love a 4:30 FS1 game. That'd be awesome. I think there might be a MLB playoffs too, or maybe the World Series at that point that Fox has to figure out if they're involved in this. They only released times for 2 of the games. Oklahoma State at Baylor is a 12:30 our time on ESPN Plus, and then Cincinnati at Colorado got the 7:15 ESPN window because ESPN loves them some Colorado.
Damn straight.
I don't know. I would love, like I said, I'd love like a 4:30 FS1. That would be great. Even another afternoon game would be great, but it's probably going to be something like 7:30 or 8 o'clock on FS1. If I'm going with the odds here.
Folks going to have to stay past midnight in Morgantown to watch that game potentially.
Yeah, the game I had, like I said, the game I had in Boulder kicked off, I think at 8:25 local time.
Wow,
which is nuts. Yeah, I know. This is really crazy. But place was packed. Nobody left. So if you got the right team, you got the right sort of stadium experience, like it can be done.
Yep.
But that it would demand a lot of changes to the current setup that they have at Arizona, and Arizona doesn't have a lot of money to pour into that.
That's right. All right. Well, huge thanks to all of you guys for submitting your questions for Lev's mailbag. We'll be back later on in the week previewing Arizona versus Colorado. Nice little afternoon matchup at Arizona Stadium.
Yeah, and we'll I didn't mention Big 12 Bonanza for reasons this week because things did not go super well over here at Lev HQ when it comes to picking games. Gonna try to rebound next week.
Bad week.
So
Bad
week.
week.
I'll start researching right now.
All right. Appreciate you guys for listening to the podcast. Check us out on Tucson.com. Also the Wildcaster mobile app, and subscribe, rate, and comment the Wildcast podcast wherever you get your podcasts.